Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today, so stick around.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm your host, Chad Fellers, along with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. How are you, Mary?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. I had a good weekend. Hope you did as well, too. Did you do anything fun?
Well, I mean, since it was Father's Day, I did
fathered?
laundry, I cooked, went to church, not in that order.
Okay. Well,
So, had a good
sounds yard work. Did you do yard work? You like
Of course
yard
I
work?
did. You know me.
Very therapeutic. Very
Yeah.
therapeutic.
I love working in the yard. I was out there pulling weeds. I think I jammed my finger.
Did
It's
you just show
fun.
me your middle finger? I think you did.
Yeah, it's the one I usually show you.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, but it really is. I mean, I can't bend it all the way. So,
Well,
from pulling weeds and stuff.
listen, from what you shared, though, you demonstrated value, right? What a perfect segue to introduce our guest for today. I can't wait to have this conversation. So without further ado, why don't you introduce who's going to be with us?
I am happy to. So today we are joined by Corinne Floyd, who I got the pleasure of seeing speak on very much this topic at the MAPS meeting earlier this year. So she brings a rich clinical foundation to the world of medical affairs. So she began her career as a clinical oncology pharmacist in the hospital setting before she moved into pharma. She started as a hematology MSL, later became a field MSL director with Johnson & Johnson. And with that, bringing that clinical lens along with her every step of the way that she got in her foundation. As a director of strategic medical engagements with Regeneron over the last 2.5 years, Corinne's been on a mission to elevate field medical teams from the inside out. She's passionate about being an advocate for medical excellence, and she believes that when field medical teams can clearly demonstrate their impact of all of their scientific engagements, then they earn a rightful seat at the table as true strategic partners within the organization. So you're definitely speaking Chad's love language there. So welcome to the show, Corinne.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Glad to be here. Really love what you guys are doing and just the premise of, learning from other leaders. I found the topics really valuable. And Chad and I met at being on a panel at a recent Congress, talking about the similar topic. So again, also my love language. Really passionate about field medical affairs, and demonstrating impact and value, which seems to be a very important topic and popular topic at recent conferences.
I can tell you, I'm so impressed. It's one of these, some people have you at hello, and I can tell you that's just interacting with Corinne over, I guess, a course of a couple of conversations as part of a prep, and then at the Congress. I know our listeners are in for a treat today in our conversation. So glad that you made some time to join us. So with that, Mary, I know you'd like to kind of kick things off with some questions and things like that.
You like it. You like it too.
I do. I kind of like it. Yes, I like to contribute. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So as we ask everybody gets some different questions, but the one everybody always gets is, Corinne, what would your walkout song be?
So, as a child of the late 1900s, I am a fan of early R&B and rap. So probably it would be Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It, 1995.
I saw him in concert. Fun fact. He opened for Boyz II Men
Oh, wow.
Mary J. Blige was the middle act. It was an amazing, but nobody wanted to listen to Montel other than "This Is How We Do It." So he did all these other songs, and almost there were boos coming out because they wanted to get to "This Is How We Do It," and that was what he closed with. But just a little fun fact: that was probably
Right.
1995 or so. So I'm dating
Right.
myself
So
as well
around the
too.
time it
Yep,
came out,
yep,
it's always
yep.
a crowd pleaser. People recognize it even without the words. So it's usually, a work appropriate,
Yep.
walk off song.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it too. Awesome. Okay. Next, if you could do anything else as a career, that means that you don't have a PharmD in this magical scenario. So anything at all without a PharmD, what would you have done with your career or as a career?
We have this conversation every time I'm in a large group with some of my colleagues. We just have this conversation at EHA. Everyone always knows what my answer is. And so we usually just skip over because it doesn't change. And I'm probably telling you a lot more about myself in this answer, but I would probably open a cat rescue.
A cat rescue.
Yeah.
I would put my capybara rescue right next door. So, have you always been passionate about um, rescuing cats?
Well, I just love cats. I love animals in general. Cats seem to be more suitable for, lifestyle, traveling, being a little bit more independent. I grew up with dogs. I grew up with cats and all kinds of animals. So it's something that I'm passionate about and would love to give more time to.
Follow up question. Litter robot, yes or no?
Ugh, no, because it's so big and I'm still into like the aesthetics of my house. So even though I have cats, I don't want to look like I have cats, if that makes
Got
sense.
it. Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I'm just unless you have some plate, somewhere to conceal it, I'm a no on that.
Fair
They're too
enough.
big. Yeah.
Fair enough. I tell you, that was what actually allowed me to really kind of like cats. I'm a big dog lover. Now I'm a cat lover. We have two little ones, but not having to clean out the litter box every day, multiple times, and things like that. It was worth every single dollar. So we stick it in the closet
Okay.
away and all that kind of stuff. So just curious on if you'd had any exposure to that. I digress, though.
I would love to have a cat, and I want. Have you ever seen the one that it's like a meme, and the cat, it's like a gray cat, and he's got little tiny ears, and he says, "I can has cheeseburger." Have you ever seen that? But the cat is so cute. He's got these cute little tiny ears. It's
I'll
like, I
have to
want
look
one of
it up.
those. I don't even know what kind of. I'll send it
Sounds
to
like
you.
I know you
sounds
have
like a
to send it to
gremlin.
us.
Sounds like a
Yeah.
gremlin, like
Oh
Gizmo
no,
or
it's so
something.
cute. So cute. Okay.
Okay.
All right. What's a tiny work victory in some people's eyes? A tiny work victory that you think deserves more celebration.
Well, based on how we started today, I think that anytime you can get the tech to work seamlessly and not have to say, "Can you hear me?" And be able to, just jump right into a call is is a
Fair
win, as we
enough.
saw today with the technical issues and the blocking of my camera. And then also, I would say the wins is like truly when you're able to stay on agenda and timing, a 45-minute meeting actually ending at 45, not going the full hours, and truly gifting that time back
Yeah,
to the universe. It's underappreciated because it doesn't happen very often.
you got it.
Oh, you're so
Yeah.
right. And that extra time you get back, you can use for the celebration.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. Last question. What's something you've gotten oddly good at outside of work because of your career in medical affairs?
Hmm. Well, I think that part of medical affairs and particularly my role, multitasking, is just something that I do on a daily basis, and being able to transition that skill set into my personal life and activities and things around the house, and I play tennis. I think that probably my multitasking abilities have been elevated based on the work that I do.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah, what else do you got? So, how about your takeaways for today, Corinne? We'd love kicking the show off with just a quick soundbite of that. Would love to anchor our listeners with the discussion topic, more details around that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, would love to hear them.
So this topic is very broad. There's so many pieces of it. And the way that I approach it, I really appreciated that, you wanted to ground the conversation in key takeaways, because I think that if you just sort of think about this in small pieces, it's really the only way, or else it feels so overwhelming. So the two that I would have, just you got to start somewhere and focus
Yeah.
on something. I would say field medical metrics and activities need to be directly tied to the broader medical affairs and, company strategic objectives.
Mm.
So everything that you do needs to be able to point back to those strategic imperatives. I know you guys can appreciate we spend so much time doing medical planning for the following year, and then rarely do you ever tie back to it. By the time you get into that new year, you're already working towards the next year. And so I think that in all of the activities, all of the engagement and strategy, that needs to be really the foundational pillar for the decisions you're making, the initiatives, the actions, the metrics. It all ties back to the strategic objectives. So that
Mm.
would be the first part. And then the ability that you must find a way to track and actually communicate the tracking of that impact from your engagement activities. And this is really how you recognize that field medical is more of a strategic partner and not just like a functional support arm or an extension of clinical operations, but actually the work that we do at field medical engagement needs to be like at front and center of pretty much all of the conversations that go into like the medical strategy as a whole. So really having that seat at the table and being viewed as an important partner for other teams to make strategic decisions.
Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of MSL League. No, really good. No, those are great. So let's dig in. So when you talk about value, how have these experiences shaped your philosophy on what it really means in medical affairs today?
Yeah, so thinking, sort of drawing back on my experience as an MSL over 10 years ago, the role is very different than where it is right now. I never remember having a strategy for my territory. You were told you're the CEO of your territory, but there really wasn't a plan. I knew how many meetings I needed a month, how many investigators I needed to talk to in a quarter, and you had the numbers, and I stayed really busy, really active, and, check the box. Like I'm excelling in the role as an MSL. But in reality, at none of those points, being busy in activity doesn't actually show. People would still ask, well, what is the field doing? What do the MSLs really do? How do they feed into the broader, organization? And, certainly we can't tie our activity, as we know, to say scripts, but there's so much more that our education and our scientific exchange and support of pipelines is doing for the company. And I would say when I first started as an MSL, I really had probably just such a very narrow understanding of the broader organization. I was just focused on my territory and just getting my numbers. And as I've moved it through the organization and now into the role that I'm at, there's a bigger ask of us being able to demonstrate the so what, and always asking, what's the headline? What's the ROI?
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, the field medical, we take up a lot of budget. We go to a lot of conferences. We're traveling, we're meeting with a lot of HCPs. We do ad boards, we do high value activities that costs a lot of money. What are we getting for it? And how is this, bringing value internally?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that, I've seen a shift now is the MSLs not only focusing on like just their territory activities, but having a really good understanding of the broader objectives in the organization, barriers that we're trying to uncover, what insights have informed why we're doing an initiative, and being able to provide that information. So it's making the MSLs have a more strategic view on their territory. It's not just the numbers, but
Yeah.
it's the certain qualitative measures and metrics that we may be looking for as an outcome. The biggest one being medical insights. I think that's our biggest currency from engagements as a whole. But there's other like innovative and different ways to also sort of capture the value and the impact that we're having on HCPs, changing their beliefs and being able to better serve their patients. And we have to be able to measure it at the end of the day. So much of what we do is qualitative, and it's really challenging. And
Yeah.
so that's why I've participated in like the panel that we had, Chad, and like other discussions with medical affairs professionals. MAPS has been an important organization in our regional chapter. We're starting here in Miami this year.
You said something that I don't know if maybe just hearing it out loud was like, oh my gosh. When you said the MSL role was so different back when I started, like we had objectives, but we didn't know what the strategy was. We just knew what we were
Yeah.
supposed to do. Um, and I mean, I started recruiting in MSLs in 2000, so it's 26 years ago, right? Yes. Um, and you're absolutely right. And it's so funny that like over the past like maybe 10 years ago, I'm like, why all of a
Mhm.
sudden are all these MSLs wanting to move into strategy roles? And it's because you started pulling the curtain back a little bit and
Yeah.
letting them know what the strategy was and what the why was, which I think is fantastic because it's given you guys so much more cool career growth because you know the why. So I don't know. I don't know why I felt like I need to say that out
Absolutely.
loud, but
And
I was
not
just
to
like,
say that there's anything wrong with career MSL.
Of
not at
I
course.
all.
100% believe that the MSL role is like the best job I've ever had. And just getting the satisfaction from the engagements I had, the relationships you build, it's so incredible. And not to, but how do we quantify that? Like we know how important the position is, how impactful it can be, and all the activities and meetings you're doing. But we weren't translating that truly into something the internal organization could understand, and draw directly back to our strategic imperatives in medical affairs. So that's been the shift, I think, over the last couple of years that I think has made, it enhances, it elevates our MSLs, um, business acumen
Right.
as well. And not just kind of operating, like I said, as just like a support arm of the organization. We're truly driving a lot
Yeah.
of the internal decisions are based off of what the MSL team is hearing, and what we bring back into the organization.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this here in a little bit more in more detail. But I think part of this too, you hit it on it in your one of your key takeaways is communicating it. It's communicating to our other partners, but I think there's also the part of communicating it back to the teams to keep them motivated. Like, what was the impact of all this work that you wanted me to go out and do? We provided all of these insights. We provided, so what? I mean, what did the company do with this information? Is it always going to lead to things? No, because that's not our role. Our role is just to bring that feedback and the company makes business decisions, of course. But I think understanding the impact that makes it just motivates people to want to go and do more and bring back even more qualitative, rich, strategically aligned information in the organization and really be an advocate for it. So Yeah, I really like the idea, and I know we've talked a little bit about that as well too. I think in some of our sidebar conversations. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be good.
And I definitely think that, I mean, talk about there's so much and where can you start? Like, where can you have the biggest win or easiest win? And it's always going to be medical insights
Yeah,
and being able to really tighten up your process. And what we developed when I started is insights to impact and action. And also being able to communicate back to the team, these are the topics that led to outcomes, actions internally. A lot of those actions don't sit with field medical.
yeah,
They're SciComm actions. They're actions and decisions that have to be made by clinical development. They're clinical operations actions. But the point is that our insights brought this topic, this challenge, this gap to our cross-functional partners. We shared it with them. We can share, did something come of it? We prioritize these things and then also share it back with the team every
yeah,
month when we're having our
yeah,
insight calls. And I think that, the feedback that I've heard from the team and what I would have appreciated as an MSL, you spend so much time after the call getting your documentation in and really, itemizing your insights and we're told insights, 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 and then it goes to a black hole.
yeah.
And so I think that our team is doing a really great job of having, sharing back of this is how important your insights are and this is what they're, where they're going.
I'd love it if it's okay if we just kind of take a step back because I think titles mean different things to different spots. I think the listeners probably getting a general idea of what the role is that you do right now. But
Mhm.
for anyone who maybe isn't clear, do you think you could kind of elaborate on what your current role at Regeneron entails? What falls into your purview? What does strategic engagement mean in practice?
Right. So I do hold a lot under that umbrella, Director for Strategic Medical Engagement. A good way that I've described my role is I'm almost a MSL internally at Regeneron. So I am the link between field medical, our headquarters medical team, and other cross functional partners. And a good example of that is my involvement in congresses. Obviously, engagement at congresses is one of the biggest, activities that we have in field medical. And working with the headquarters team to develop the medical objectives for that meeting. Who do we want to meet with? What are the topics that are of interest? And being able to create an archetype or criteria for a wish list of HCPs and being able to translate that and communicate that then to the MSLs. The headquarters team, these are the medical objectives. These are the number of meetings we're scoped to support. Each MSL should, be able to come up with like 2 to 3, on their wish lists that fit into this criteria. It all points back to what were the medical objectives for that meeting and also just the broader medical objectives for that year, that quarter that we're in. And so it's the pull through of that. We go to a meeting, we have a ton of medical insights, we have actions, we have impact that comes from the engagements. I'm then able to take that information and sort of summarize, pointing back again to the objectives that we had going into the meeting. Not only did we have X number of engagements, how did that support our pipeline? How did that support, trial awareness? How did that support scientific engagement and data dissemination for our oral data and that we presented at that Congress? And so I'm able to point back to all of the objectives that we went in with, not just give the numbers because everyone wants to say, oh, we had 100 meetings at a conference. And so what? But were we able to get 10 feasibilities sent out for new interest in a study that we're looking for US sites? Those are the sort of bits of information that I'm capturing after a Congress so that I can go back and communicate internally of this is what the impact of our engagements and the value from attending this conference. So that's, we have so many conferences in oncology. So it almost seems like a rotating, right when I finish one, I'm planning already for the next one. So that does become a big part of my role, is engagement related to congresses. Outside of that, I also manage our database for thought leaders. So the development of our global, national, regional rising stars, digital opinion leaders, and any engagement initiative that we may have that's segmented towards an HCP type with a specific objective, community HCPs, different development of objectives, engagement initiatives for those specific HCPs. And so I'm kind of the keeper of the thought leader list. We refine it every year, develop the criteria for it. It's definitely an art, not a science. You can't just go off of publications, things like that. And so we've refined it, and I really rely on the field medical team for validation. So I've created a framework and a process of how we develop, our thought leaders. The MSLs have their own sort of HCP universe that they own as well. But I at least provide the global, the national, the regional rising stars for the team. And we manage that throughout the year with different engagement objectives. So high level, those are like the two big activities that I work within. And again, supporting the headquarters teams, the clinical development team. We've really done a great job of cross collaboration, and again, showing our value to our partners internally, that they want to work with field medical and they see the value in the insights and information that we're bringing to them.
Okay.
You said, okay, that's a lot. Yeah. I think,
Well, you should see all the notes I'm
and,
writing down
Yeah,
here.
so
Like,
that's it.
I,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
like the
all I do.
idea.
Just that.
Yeah.
That's
Just a
all.
note taker. That's all. The idea
Yeah.
of having congresses and having objectives for that, I think, is so important. One of the most frustrating things is, hey, fill up a time slots of, we've got leadership here, want to meet with KOL. Well, what's the point, right? Like, give me that reason for them, because number one, it shows respect for the KOL's time too, not just uh, the
Exactly.
the businesses, right? So having some of those things, so I really think that is a very valuable
Yeah.
thing that impacts the internally but externally as well too, especially when you have multiple um, cross-functional teams that support these providers. They're all begging for time, and it's just one company that doesn't even include all the others that they're having to
Right.
as well too, and we lose sight of that so easy. So just the fact
And
that
so
you're
many
that's good.
companies want to say, oh, we have a one Regeneron approach. We have a one, company approach, but
Right.
truly we've embodied that. I've put together a framework for cross-functional Congress alignment where we have a weekly call, medical's on it, clinical development's on it, the commercial team's on it. And we go through the tracker and we say, who's the meeting champion? Who's
Yeah.
the outreach lead? Who are the attendees? Nobody reaches out until that's established, because there might be three teams that are trying to meet with the same person. And we know what that looks like and what chaos that may look like to the HCP who's getting multiple requests from people. And so we've really streamlined it to make sure that only one person's reaching out.
Yeah.
And then you can say there's other objectives, there's other teams that want to use this time. But I think it's important, from an HCP perspective. I've, been involved in congresses that are just absolute chaos when you don't have a clear alignment internally. It really shows to your physicians, and also not having the clear objectives going into a meeting and just, hey, how
Yeah.
how are you enjoying the meeting? And,
Yeah.
just meeting for the sake of
Social.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't help anyone. MSLs can meet any of these folks in their own territory at any time.
That's right.
So what are we bringing? What value is it if I'm asking this global thought leader to meet with, my leadership and clinical development and headquarters medical teams at a conference? We have to have clear objectives.
And I think it really is. I think it's we need to start thinking about this, and I'm sure that that's something you're doing as well too, is how when we're engaging the global, national, regionals as well too, especially when you have, again, multiple field teams trying to reach out, whether it's patient advocacy, whether it's services, I mean, whatever,
Right.
you name it, billing, all these different touch points. I mean, it can get, company fatigue is a real thing, and these providers
Absolutely.
can, so it's so important to streamline those things. So I like that this is really cool that you're being intentional on that. I'm even thinking about from the leading portfolio teams. There's always this battle for there's only so much time in the day. There's only such percent
Yeah.
time allocation we can devote to it. Everybody has priorities. How do we think about priority, right? For each one and
Yeah.
balancing that. So can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
So, I mean, we're in a unique position. So, we are almost July will be 1 year post approval for our drug in multiple myeloma,
Okay.
which was a third to market BCMA bispecific. But uniquely, we also have another product in lymphoma that is approved in EU, has authorization in EU, but not in the US yet. And so we had received a complete response letter. So initially we were supposed to launch two drugs. We were launch ready for two drugs in the same year, two bispecifics. And now just supporting one commercially in the US,
Yeah.
we obviously have to prioritize this very important launch post approval this year and shift our priorities, to more of like an 80-20 split between the products. So still supporting pipeline for the drug that's not approved yet, meaning
Uh,
follow-ups with the investigators. And so there still is a strategy. So even when you have to deprioritize some of the activities, we still do have a strategy. We're not just saying, oh, we're not going to get approved with that drug. So we're not going to, put together, a focused approach. We
right.
still do. We just had to, refine it a little bit and say only focus on our key investigators and only focus on the global thought leaders in that space or the guideline members
Yeah.
in that space. And
Okay.
so it became focused, but very clear of this is who we are meeting with, and we're still supporting our program. And then the other 80% is focused on the drug that is approved on the market. And so we obviously have a much broader engagement strategy beyond just global. We have national, we have regional rising stars, digital opinion leaders. That's another can of worms. Would love to get your opinion on
I was
engagement
gonna
with
say,
DOLs.
yeah, well, we probably don't have time. We have to maybe do this on another topic. That's
Sure.
exactly like, do we even, should we even be thinking about them as a separate category, right? I mean,
It's
are
hard.
we
There's
now in
overlap.
this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, nevertheless on that. All right. So, but what I'm hearing though is the importance of having a strategic objective for the medical engagement, regardless of whether it's approved a product or not. That
Right.
is a priority with that. So we think about evaluating metrics or indicators. What what do you think best captures some of these things when we're thinking about the impact of these strategic medical engagements? Would love to hear kind of what you're
Yeah.
working on or doing to help communicate that.
Yeah. I mean, it's challenging. One of the best workshops that I went to recently
Was the
just
one
so
led by Chad Feller?
Oh my
I think that was his
gosh.
name. It was
So
somebody
sorry.
who
Go.
had, like, a pink blazer
Oh
on.
my gosh.
Oh, that
I'm
was
just
definitely
joking.
Chad
Oh
Feller's name.
my
If he had a
gosh. All
pink
right. Go
Right.
blazer.
ahead, Corinne. I'm so sorry. Please continue. Go
No,
ahead.
but I also talked about this on my panel, at MAPS this year
Yeah.
as well, wanting to provide people with, like, different ways of thinking about, matching the qualitative metrics with the quantitative metrics,
Mhm.
and thinking about the best place to start is honestly an engagement initiative that you're already doing and defining it out. Because you're probably already doing an activity like, oh, we're tasking the MSLs with, doing education for pharmacists and nurses in, in community sites, just let's say. And so there's a lot of initiatives already happening. Now, think about what would you like to see? What's the outcome from that long term? It's physicians being more aware of the drug, the nursing being comfortable with the side effect management, the dosing being favorable, from a pharmacist perspective. And maybe they're requesting more information. Maybe they're requesting additional in services. And a lot of times, the MIRs are something that, from that site that we can count, or even request for re-engagement, medical inquiries that are submitted for additional information. And so thinking about like all of the pieces of the MSL just didn't go into this site and complete this activity, but what are surrogates for what they did? The insights that they put in from having that engagement? Did it call out a gap, a barrier, something that we need to refine? Is there a gap in the resource that they shared? They were asking this question, but we actually didn't have anything to speak to that. So now we're going to update this resource because that was a gap. And so being able to call out like those pieces that come from the engagement that we just sort of assume are happening are really the pieces that we need to be showing that show the value and will show the impact, because it's hard to measure relationships, but at the end of the day, that's really what we do. And that's the foundation of field
Mm.
medical and MSLs. And to build relationships, to build credibility, it takes multiple interactions and trust and conversations and, being able to show and validate, your scientific acumen and your value to that practice and that team. And so, they're thinking about a good example would be, at a community site, these physicians are seeing, like 50 patients a day. Being able to talk to you for 15 to 30 minutes, taking time away from one patient that they could be seeing monetarily is, this was something that came up, we were talking about at one of the panels actually at Nexus. If you remember, like, is there a way to put a monetary value of the time that an HCP, community HCP, gave to an MSL in lieu of seeing one patient during that time? And like, what is that like monetarily as far as, them not seeing that patient and being able to charge for that time that they were talking to you because the information that you were bringing them was valuable. And so thinking about like surrogate ways, when we document in CRM, usually I think most of us have the duration that you
Mhm.
spent, and being able to see durations of 30 minutes plus, especially in a community setting or with HCPs that are very limited on time, like that's a valuable indicator that the MSL is really, has a good relationship, it has the credibility, and is bringing something to the HCP.
I like it. I think it's a yes and with that. I think that there's a few, and I think you would probably agree with this. I want to just have to make sure that it's not a gaming play by the team. And what I mean by that is, hey, why has your average gone from 30 minutes down to 15 minutes? Does that mean that that means that you're not providing the same type of information or those types of things?
Right,
If that happens, right, then you have a team that wants to feel compelled that they're always going to round up and those types of things. I definitely think if it can be framed the right way, that it's not punitive or those things. I just think those are potential watch outs for that. I love the idea. I think that that's fascinating to think about. How do you put a monetary value? I think that would be a
right.
great way of showing that. And it's very outside the box. That's great.
There there are teams that have looked into that, as far as, the average time that
Yeah.
they give, say, a commercial colleague versus a
Yes.
medical colleague. Like, we know those numbers.
Yeah.
So being able to equate that again as a surrogate to the time that an HCP is giving you that they're not giving to a patient that they're, able to bill.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I think you, I think going back to this to the qualitative component, having to be able to safely put in free text information is really essential for these types of things to happen, because to the point, the qualitative or the time allocated to a meeting is great, but what's the so what that comes from
Mhm.
it? And one of the things that we did, I think I may have shared this, is, I mean, you can do something as simple as, okay, we have an initiative to share this particular article that just came, or this piece of data that just came out.
Mhm.
We're gonna have a 6-month initiative on this, or whatever that is, and you could have a simple question of this data, whatever it is, will impact my clinical decision making. Agree, disagree, or whatever that is, and then the reason why. And then you can go back, and therefore it's not just on the MSLs to do it, but it really represents what the medical affairs organization is putting out.
Right.
If it allows the MSL to be more objective in their subjectivity in bringing it back, if they don't feel like they're going to be penalized if they're not moving the needle, so to speak, in ways, right? So
Right. And we have to be careful with that because we don't want it to fall back on us if a, drug isn't performing a certain
that's right.
way, then field medical, we're just a piece of it. And to say that we're going to be the one to move the needle, it's an omni-channel approach. It's the data that moves the needle. It's the time and the experience. Were they an
Yeah.
investigator? Were they not? And so there's so many other pieces that really influence and inform an HCP's perception.
Yep.
What's your thought on, so I know one of the buzzwords right now and hot topics is, patient journey, scientific journey, moving, beliefs, strongly believe or, not a believer. What is your thought on that?
So it's a great question. I think it all goes back to what is the reason why we're asking this? If it really is to evaluate performance of teams, I don't think it's good, because again, you're going to input what is requested of you to be able to check. It is a check the box feature if it's that way. I think
Yeah.
that there are ways to that. Now, I think from an internal management perspective, I think you can look across your regions or across the nation and say, okay, is there an outlier of all of these? Or is Texas showing up as uh, a non-believer where the rest of the nation is doing this? Okay, well,
Yeah.
do I need to really kind of focus in? Are there educational opportunities or way that we're delivering information? Can it be improved to make sure, or is this truly the real outlier? Right. So I understand the idea of the scientific journey, but I think it can't be. Sometimes it takes 6 times in different ways, or going back to repeat things. I think that's the trap the MSLs fall into is, hey, I don't have anything new to talk about. Well, if you really are assessing where they are, do they believe, and why or why not they believe,
Mhm.
it's an opportunity to go back and follow up. So I think if you were asking me yes or no, I don't know how I would say yes if, right? The
Yeah.
concept is good, but it has to be really presented and aligned as a company in the right way to really get the impact out of it. I think, I mean, if not, it's just trying to assess impact, or to show internally impact that your team is doing,
Right.
but that may not have substance to it, I guess, right? If
Yeah.
done in the wrong way. That's my thought. What's your thought?
I'd love to hear from someone who has experience doing it well.
Yeah.
I've heard, really extreme cases where it's taken to the point of being punitive
Yeah.
or, within a territory, not moving the belief or the sentiment for HCPs. And I just don't think that field medical can own that.
Agree.
especially you don't have additional data, they don't have experience with your drug. There's other, a million other barriers for why perhaps they have, that belief or that impression. And so I think it is a slippery slope, and it's definitely a topic that I'm very interested in hearing from other folks, other leaders that have implemented it successfully and have shown value more so than internally, but how is this valuable to HCPs? That's where I guess I'm struggling to
So
understand.
I've seen it this way. I know Mary's sitting here going, "Wow, she's taking it all in on some of these conversations." I would
Yeah,
what I would
it's
say
mind
about
blowing, all of
this
this stuff.
is we've been able to measure sentiment, or I've seen it done. I won't speak necessarily to bit or certainly what's going on in my current role, but done it in the past where you can evaluate time periods of so from from Q4 you had 60% that were in that believes, and now
Yeah.
in Q1 now their perception is shifted to 50% versus okay, so what was the barrier or what caused the reduction in this? As long as you have the insights that go with it and you can analyze it, I think that's where so maybe it's not enough data is being, not enough details have been shared around X or Y, or the company's not doing this. So that can really bring the attention to the company to say, okay, hey, this is a major issue that needs to be addressed because it's going to cause maybe clinical acceptance of our product if this is not taken care of, or side of care things, or there's an explosion in this therapeutic area that they're not used to having to do all these infusions or this, that, and the other. We need to really get in front of this. So I think
Right.
if you do it, as long as it's not by itself, where it's just a click the
Yeah.
box of, hey, I use this information, they believe they either believe or they didn't. If you can't say, hey, we're looking at this segment and saying they do or they don't, and here's the reason why that's driving it. I think we can do that now with AI if it's set up the right way.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think it can be done, Corinne. I think it just has to be done in the right way, and it can really make an impact to say, okay, hey, we've asked this question to 100 providers. You can cut it up every different way, better provider type, certain regions, this, that. Here is where they are, and here is why. And then here's a
Yeah.
suggestion for consideration, or here's what we're already doing. We're already addressing this with a real world, in medical affairs, so you can offer assurance. Or
Evidence gap. Yeah.
yeah, so there's different things that as long as you can provide that context, I think it can be beneficial. If you don't have that, you don't have a system to set that up, then it really doesn't provide any value. It can only set you up for potential failure. That's my thought on it.
Do you need do you agree that you need a lot of time? Like, this is a very longitudinal,
100%.
activity. It's not something
Yes.
you can do and then 6 months later look at it again and really say, for example, at baseline at the beginning of the year, let's say 100 people, their sentiment was neutral. 6 months, it now is 100% positive.
Yeah.
Can you really say in that 6 months what activities, what engagement changed the impression? And is it all attributed to medical affairs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe the competitor got a CRL, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And we're the only show in town. So I think that there's a lot of components that even our AI or our insights may not be able to pick up on what
So
created that shift.
yeah. So I think that let's take this to a further extreme. Let's take it to put a commercial hat on. Say you're a salesperson. All of a sudden you see an increase in prescriptions of your drug. Can you say it's because of the sales or because of your call activity and the questions and the conversations and relationships? Absolutely, you can say that's
No.
part of it, but it could be because formulary change. It could be
Right.
there could be other factors, but that's not. I mean, it's all about the storytelling and how fair and balanced, or I know as scientists, we want to be objective and say, okay, and I think because you asked the same question, we were talking about, hey, how can you utilize claims data across all the therapeutic area? Hey, now people have been diagnosed more, or they're utilizing this test more. Well, can
Mhm.
you attribute that to the MSL's work? Well, I mean, you could infer some of those things. I don't know if you could
Right.
say it's concrete proof, but I do think it is a
No.
shift and a step in that direction that gives people confidence that there are things beyond just going out and telling things. They're actually, what's the impact of telling these things? Because quite honestly, I don't think the company cares as long as there is projection of things moving forward. Now,
Yeah.
when you get into your own prescription, obviously can't go there, but things around diagnosis and those types of things or testing, I think you can look at those things and see if there are trends in 6 months or 9 months. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely more longitudinal, certainly.
Yeah. And I think that maybe the key thing here is that it's impact storytelling. You know what I
That's it.
mean? Like each individual initiative is going to have it's going to have nuances, and it's a story that you have to
Yes.
tell. And so, that was one of the things that I talked about at MAPS was about impact story for an engagement initiative. Um, and you have to be able to have a systematic way of telling that.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been working to develop, a framework, something that's consistent. And for me, the easiest way was to use the STAR method, which just goes back to interviewing. So, how that came to me is going back to when I was applying for residencies, for pharmacy school. And I was prepping for my interviews. I was panicking, kind of, this was my first time, interviewing for a job, sort of. And my dad, who has 30 years in on the commercial side in pharma, he suggested that I learn to apply the STAR method. So situation, task, action, result. And he said, this is basically a way of storytelling. You start with like what's at stake, what's your decisions, and overall what were the results and the impact. And he said, every question you get, especially behavioral questions during the interview, you can answer it in this way if you just think about clear, concise, and it will stop you from rambling about it and being able to really speak to, get to the question and why it matters. And so we like practiced it, and he's like, okay, tell me an example of, a time you had a team conflict or something like that. And then asking me, okay, well, like quantify what you did, like tell them like what you learned and how you're going to carry that into residency or how that will, impact, for future activities. And so later in my career, like I realized that the STAR method for interviewing wasn't just a framework for answering those sort of behavioral questions, but can be really applied to anything to demonstrate outcome and value. And so, like, that's probably the easiest, like, takeaway is employing it on something that you're already doing.
Mm,
So it's not linear. You don't have to start with STAR. Most of the time, we're already at A. Unfortunately, just something got thrown out there, an initiative, and we need to meet with these people. And you have to sometimes take a step back and ask why, fill in like, what was the situation? What was the scenario? What is like the objective? And how does this align to a medical objective? Why we're doing this? And then when you think about like the task, what are the metrics that you're going to measure? We already told the MSLs to go out and talk to X number of HCPs because it's important for, gathering insights, but how are we going to measure that? Is it just through the insights? Is it on the number of, reactive, requests for additional information? Are we going to look at the time spent? And so sometimes you do have to build backwards, but I think that it's a clean way of sort of taking in a very complicated,
Mhm.
scenario, and being able to communicate it in pieces. And then when you get to the R, that's obviously the results, the impact, and all of that you draw back to the medical objectives that you sort of set out and spelled out with the start of it.
And that's one of the things that really grabbed me. I actually had that in my list of things to ask you about, because I was at your session and there were people lining the walls, because there were so many people in there. Um,
Standing room only.
Standing room, and as an interviewer by career, basically, I'm with you. Totally believe like you can apply the star format to anything in life, and I was really taken by that, and the fact that you can use it to dissect when things went right and when things went wrong by starting at the R and work your way backwards. I just think that's freaking genius. But that's all I got to say about that.
Right. Because
So
so
Sh
many times we're doing a lot of things and it's like the so what, it doesn't draw back to anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't have it. How does this align with the strategy or the original objectives? If you're measuring something just to measure it, then it's a vanity metric. It's a vanity KPI. Why are we doing it? So I think that it's important to assess why you're doing these activities, and it's good to start with maybe an initiative that's already going on and see if you can build the pieces backwards, which will help you in the next engagement initiative and developing the strategy for future projects. So
So
you do have to
Corinne,
dissect it.
so can you think of a time? Can you and you don't you can decline. That's fine. Um, can you think of a time where there has been an initiative that was started and there was, because what I'm hearing is it really needs to be assessed fairly quickly as well too. Like, how is this initiative going? So has there ever been a time where you've pulled the plug, or you've pushed to pull the plug because it's not linking back like you thought it was to a strategic objective? Would love to hear
Yeah,
it.
so that's definitely when you outline and you think about the action or the activity, there's a timeline on it, and there has to be a cadence for assessment. Are we assessing this monthly? Are we assessing this quarterly? Because you need to be able to have that feedback to
Yeah.
adjust, find out maybe a metric isn't working, or there's something you may learn new information of something that you didn't realize was important in this initiative, and you may need to pivot. And so, definitely experiencing a scenario with that right now where getting more information, getting insights are actually changing the trajectory of what the initiative was initially set out to be, because we're uncovering, maybe some education or some additional needs that we may be able to meet. So you can't just roll out an initiative without a plan to assess regularly, figure out what that cadence is, and be able to pivot. I mean, just because you started something, if it's not working, you don't just continue to plow through. And then also questioning, initiatives and decisions of this is why we're meeting with, certain thought leaders or a segment of the HCPs. I want to know why or what we hope to gain for it, what value we're bringing to them, what value they're going to bring back to us. Um, that's why I asked you earlier the question about digital opinion leaders.
Yeah.
I really struggle with that. And having, although most of your traditional thought leaders, there's overlap, probably I'd say about 80% are active on socials, at least in my field in hematology. But for the other, let's say 20% that are not traditional thought leaders, but are posting quite regularly, what does that engagement look like? But why do we feel like we need to engage with them? Like, are we influencing? Are we just educating? So that, for awareness, scientific exchange, do we want to get different insights back from them that we think will be different from our traditional HCPs? And so that's definitely like a segment that's growing. And
Mm.
and at these conferences, I know that the digital space and what can medical affairs do is has really been a big topic. So I always attend those ones because I'm still trying to figure out what does engagement from a field perspective look like with within the digital space.
Yeah. What's compliant? What's not?
Hmm.
Is it risk? Is it risk aversion? Risk tolerance? What are
Right.
the different levels? It's not an easy Rubik's cube to solve, I guess, for lack
Yeah.
of better words.
And there's some innovative things you can do. You can co-create, you can do polls, you can have them sort of react to data after a
Yeah,
conference. But, there's a lot of that brings monetary aspects into it, which is outside of the scope of just our traditional medical
yeah,
field activities.
yeah,
And so I feel like that maybe sits more with med ed and SciComm than traditional field medical activities.
yeah, yeah,
So if we're talking about like what skills people are going to really need for the future to be effective. Already kind of talked about like digital opinion leaders and how do we figure out who we should be spending a lot of time on and how much and what the interaction should be. Um, so maybe this is a little bit of the magic question. If you are predicting the future, um, what skills do you think medical affairs leaders are going to need? I feel I was going to say like in the next 5 to 10 years, but I feel like 10 years is so hard to predict. Like maybe the next 5 years.
The next year,
Yeah,
yeah.
next year exactly. What do you think they should like absolutely be developing or honing as a skill?
I think that ability to utilize AI is a non-negotiable at this point. I don't think that you can sit back and just do the bare minimum rewording emails or summarizing an article. Um, it's been a very powerful tool to pull together multiple pieces of information and organize them so I can spend less time on the operational administrative side of pulling data together to
Yeah.
be able to spend more time making decisions and analyzing it. And so I think that that's been a critical tool that in order to be successful and especially to be in a strategy role, leverage the AI, take out of some of the administrative burden and creation of slide decks and putting three different sources of information into one place so you can spend more time thinking about the so what.
I'm just sitting here thinking about all the different topics that we've talked about today.
Now we've
The insights
scratched
you've
the
been able to share.
surface in
We've
about
scratched
four
the
or
surface on a
five
lot of
things that
these.
we need to
I
dig
Yeah, that's really
know, I
into.
good.
know. That's the thing is like there's so many topics like within this, and it's a impact and value in medical affairs. I mean,
Yeah,
you almost need to do just a single course and have
yeah,
breakouts of each of these topics within
yeah.
it because it feels so broad and where do you start and we're all doing a little bit of each of the pieces but having focused conversation on truly just like one dedicated topic within it I think would be really helpful.
I know our listeners have loved the conversation. A lot of good takeaways for this. So as we wrap things up, if you could give one piece of advice to other medical affairs leaders trying to elevate their strategic impact, what would it be?
I think it's to start with where you're already at and think about an activity currently in process. Again, the lowest hanging fruit and easiest win is medical insights. If you're not already have a path of tracking the actions and outcomes from just recording those insights, like you're missing the boat. That's the
Yeah,
easiest. We have the most volume there. So starting with an activity that the team is already doing, whether it's, metric driven and you just say they just need to meet with all of their global thought leaders within, a certain time period, dissect that and understand. have we assessed their baseline sentiment? Have we had guided key insight questions that we've been able to gather from this particular group of HCPs and analyze that for any gaps, anything that may inform a clinical development program, evidence generation. And so being able to show something that we're already doing the activity, but maybe step back and there's no harm in instituting a new plan or task from an activity already in progress. Hey, we're already doing this. Maybe we can measure this now. Maybe we should start adding in the time, etc. So, thinking about something that you're already doing, start small, and really try to frame it out and use the STAR method and being able to show, one win. You just have to start somewhere and being able to communicate that internally, get that buy-in of understanding that the work that we do in medical affairs, field medical, is so important and how it aligns back to, say, the broader medical strategy is always important.
Here's just a secret. I 100% align with what you said. I think it's a great piece of advice. Those that have company approved AI tools like Copilot, things like that, ask the literally put that in there. Think like a medical affairs leader trying to communicate this. I've got this action, blah, 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 and help me be able to tell a story
Or
utilizing STAR format. And then you go in and it gives you a draft. Don't leave it that way, but it gives you a context to think about these things different. We have to think about these things differently, or we will always be at risk because we're not communicating the impact that we truly have. So I will step off my soapbox now and really just want to thank you for the time, Corinne.
yeah.
You really, I've been excited to have you. We've been excited to have you on.
Well,
And
thank you for your patience. Busy time since we met. I've been on the go. I've been to 3 4 meetings, since
across
then. So
countries,
yeah,
across the
across
globe.
countries, continents. So I really appreciate, your guys' patience, and I was excited to talk to you as well. So I'm glad it worked out today. Thank you.
Definitely want to have you back, maybe to dig in a couple more of these topics that we scratched the surface on. So thanks again for making time, navigating some technical difficulties, and I think it was well worth it. I think the listeners are going to really appreciate the insights that you shared. So to our listeners, thanks so much for joining us for another casual conversation of all things medical affairs. Remember that leaders don't learn in isolation. Leaders learn from leaders. And that's what we do here at MSLE Chronicles. Until next time, lead well.